All right, glad to have you back. Federal government has projected that Nigeria's debt-to-GDP ratio could climb to as high as 60% by 2027 on the renewed debt management framework approved by the Federal Executive Council. The projection was contained in Nigeria's medium-term debt management strategy for 2024 to 2027, which was announced by the Debt Management Office in a press release issued on its website. The strategy, developed with the technical support from the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, is described as a global best practice for managing public debt. According to the DMO, the framework seeks to strike a balance between the government's financing needs and debt sustainability, while minimizing costs and risk associated with borrowing. Now, the statement notes that key objectives of the MTDS are to meet with government's financing needs and payment obligations, the short to medium term, taking into consideration the cost and risk trade-offs in the debt portfolio to achieve optimum composition of public debt portfolio that ensures debt sustainability, and to further deepen the domestic securities market through the introduction of new products. My guest is Managing Director, Chief Business Officer, Optimus by AfriInvest, Dr. Ayodeji Ebo. Dr. Ebo, good afternoon, and thank you so much for your time on the program.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here.
Well, let me ask with what you make of a 60% GDP debt to GDP ratio. Is that worrisome?
Yes, definitely it's worrisome. And the major reason is that our GDP, would say, is not as productive as expected. You know, when you look at, I see GDP like an asset. How much of value are we deriving from our GDP? Because it's the GDP that should be able to generate revenue in multiple times that will be able to pay off the debt. So as much as the debt, what it means, it simply means is that if we're already projecting based on the current position at almost about 57% GDP debt to GDP ratio, then we're already projecting that it will increase to about 70%. So that means that our debt is rising faster than the rate at which the economy is improving. And how will the economy improve? It's how we're able to strategically sweat the GDP to bring out the value and generate revenue from that GDP. So I would say it's worrisome. On the other hand, we can also say that, yes, debt, if the debt is strictly used to support productive sector, there's also the potential that there will be revenue that will be produced in multiples, such that the debt sustainability, ability to pay, and the rate at which the debt will rise will not be as much as what we are seeing. So it's really a concerning situation, given that our debt will continue to increase. So you also want to look at the structure. So you see there's the domestic debt as well as the foreign debt. So currently, when you look at the mix, there's a target mix that it shouldn't be more than 70-30, but we're almost, I think, around 45-55 in terms of the current mix, which means that our foreign debt, the more we increase our foreign debt, if there's any major devaluation in the currency, so without even borrowing more, it will increase the naira needed to service that debt, which was what we saw, if you like, the last 2 years. So even if the government had not borrowed more, the devaluation would have increased our total debt position, which is currently around $97 million. You know, when you translate that, that's about 149 trillion. So I would say that it's concerning, but we also need to look forward. How can we strategize and strictly borrow? I always make reference to the likes of the Sukuk bond that is always project-based. Project-based, that we borrow and we can tie it. So you are passing through, you see the roads, you see those projects. That will minimize having some of the complexity that we're seeing now, that we borrow for non-productive sector, borrow to pay salary, borrow to reservice loan, all those things would continue to reduce the effectiveness of our budget. Because as much as when you look at the revenue for the budget, if the debt servicing is increasing, what will be left for capital expenditure would be constrained. And it is capital expenditure that most of the populace will benefit from, infrastructure, opening up the economy, creating enabling environment that will now begin to generate revenue in the future.
Brilliant stuff. Do we have options at the moment, particularly as we look forward to a tax law that should be implemented from 2026? Do we have options at this time, aside from borrowing, running into more debt?
So I think that one of the options that we may want to further explore is the partnership with private sector. So government's revenue will continue to be constrained, but we can also, it should also be concerning also to the government why we're not seeing as much interest in private sector interest in most of these projects. And one of the reasons is the policy inconsistency, enforcement of contract. We saw what happened on Lekki Ikoyi Bridge, that there will be a policy, private sector supports, and the government can come and things don't work out as expected. So some of these things they are major drawback, because what I expect government to be doing with the little resources that are available is more of counterparty funding, that they're just showing good faith by in a project. When they say a project, a real project, they contribute 10-30% and allow private sector to run this, because their revenue or resources will continue to be constrained. So, and if they're able to get those collaboration, either from domestic investors or foreign investors, that will also reduce the need to borrow significantly. And there will also now be need to cut the costs. So you look at the recurrent expenditure on the budget, most times range of 50% of total revenue. So when you look at it as a proportion of actual revenue, because budget, you can forecast what you expect to make. But when you look at recurrent expenditure, which is not the productive part of it, it's really very high as a relative to the actual expenditure. So all those things needs to also be watched. So it means that the cost of providing regulation, the cost of providing policies for the enabling environment is even significantly higher than the cost of the business that these policies are supporting. So there's a need to look at that. It's really very high. So as long as we continue to carry that high cost, and we're also not making use of the little resources that we have to attract private sector, more of private sector in most of these contracts, then we would have to be borrowing more, because government will also be under pressure to see how they want to deliver on some of their promises, especially in infrastructure that should support growth.
Indeed, and we see bold infrastructure projects being embarked upon by this present administration. Now, this document strategy is developed in line with technical support from the likes of World Bank and IMF to meet standards. I think that's what it is, and to properly manage public debt. But looking at our budget implementation and the challenge with revenue, that really is my question. How well do you see the implementation? We even see the 2024 budget now. Part of it is being moved for implementation because of capital projects that need to be executed. All of this is about funding. What do you think about the effect of the document? That's the spending plan at the end of the day.
Okay, I think what I would say is that we don't always have problem in putting together documents. We are very intelligent people in the country. Our major bottleneck is actual implementation. So it's based on, and it's the implementation that will determine the output that you get. So you can have a very fantastic policy blueprint, but if it's not properly implemented, then you shouldn't be surprised with the output that you get. So looking at the MTEF report, which is like an annual report that precedes the annual budget, just to give a guidance to what you should expect from 2026 budget. The revenue will continue to be a major challenge. So when you see, yes, tax will be increased, the new tax policy, would at least encourage SMEs. But even those SMEs, when you look at the cost of doing business, is really very high. Is it energy cost, logistic cost? Is really very high. So as a result, survival is less. And if most of the SMEs that the government is in that particular space, but it is not sufficient because inflation cost has increased. So because inflation cost has increased. So even on a personal level, when you look at your expenditure, it has more than tripled in the last 3 years. So government costs have also increased significantly, but the revenue has not increased at that same rate. So there will continue to be a gap. So you look at our budget deficit will continue to increase, given that gap that we are seeing, because as a result of the challenges that really very obvious challenges that we'll continue to see around the revenue.
Before I let you go, I'm thinking of roles of subnationals, and my question will be around FAC, which we see a very large improvement. Just last month, 2.01 trillion naira was shared. So I'm just thinking around that point that are we not supposed to expect more from the subnationals at this point to support the federal government, particularly with some major projects too, because of the increase of funding?
Yes, that's a very interesting point, and we need to also begin to focus more on the subnationals. We are not seeing that impact, because of the devaluation of the naira value that the most of the states have received in the last 3 years have doubled. But can we say it has translated into improved productivity or development across those states? I'm not sure. Maybe 1 or 2 states may stand out, but we need to begin to hold them accountable. We need to see, do they publish their actual budgets? What are except during when the passage of the budget? Those are some of the things that will create transparency. We also need collaborations within some of the states. So whether it's the eastern states, western states, we need the northern state collaboration in terms of infrastructure, rail system, security-wise. That would also help to improve the activity. You see some states are over-concentrated. So why can't we have a light rail from Lagos to Ondo, for instance? It will open up the access, so there won't be major concentration of even industries within population within Lagos State. So those are some of the things that I feel that some of the states, they should begin to compete. You see developed climes. What policies are they setting up that if a company wants to set up today, which when they do the analysis, which state would give me more benefit in terms of tax, insecurity, cost of doing business, labor? These are some of the conversations that the governors should be having each other or having within their states to create that enabling environment that their state becomes a major destination for investment. That's foreign direct investment. And we are not saying that, and we can also see without that, we can't expect any major result. It's not just some are trying around infrastructure. Yes, you open it up, but businesses, how are you able to attract businesses to your state? Why will a company relocate from one state to state? That's what we see in developed climes, that you make some state viable. People want to relocate. We should be seeing relocation to states because you can find more jobs in one state because of what the governor has done. to attract direct investment into that state and jobs into that state. So these are the things that it's not new, a lot of, but it is the implementation, like we said.
Yeah, that matters.
That is really very key.
I must thank you so much, Managing Director, Chief Business Officer at Optimals by AfriInvest, Dr. Ayode Jebo, for your time on the program. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.